Coming up on the show, the government shutdown continues, but your wallet may soon get a little heavier. We're going to explain the latest plan from the White House to find out if it's real relief or just political pressure in disguise. Also, online classes promise convenience until you're caught on camera doing something maybe you shouldn't be doing. We're investigating how a digital flag may have cost one Kennesaw State student her future. And they're stealthy, adaptable, and showing up in unexpected places. Find out how a UGA study is changing how we think about living with coyotes. This is The Take. Let's get it. Hello and welcome. I'm Chesley McNeil, and this is The Take, where we go above and beyond the headlines and we look at the why and how stories are impacting you and your community. We invite the experts in to share their take on today's top stories, and we try to have just a little bit of fun as well. Let's start off with this. A remark from Pope Leo XIV is reverberating far beyond the Vatican. It came amid controversy over honoring long-term U.S. Senator Dick Durbin from the Holy Father's birthplace in Illinois. Now, the Pope Leo also spoke about the broader moral responsibility of leaders and urged Catholics and all Americans to look at the full ethic of life.
Someone who says I'm against abortion but says I'm in favor of the death penalty is not really pro-life. So someone who says that I'm against abortion but I'm in agreement with the inhuman treatment of immigrants who are in the United States, I don't know if that's pro-life. So they're very complex issues. I don't know if anyone has all the truth on them, but I would ask first and foremost that there be greater respect for one another and that we search together both as human beings, in that case as American citizens or citizens of the state of Illinois, as well as Catholics, to say we need to really look closely at all of these ethical issues and to find the way forward as church.
All right, with us to examine Pope Leo's comments a little further is Susan Reynolds, Associate Professor of Catholic Studies at the Emory University. Hello, Susan. Welcome to the show.
It's good to be here.
All right. What stood out to you most about Pope Leo's comments?
Well, I think what stood out to me most is the fact that he was articulating precisely what Catholic moral teaching upholds, which is this incredibly expansive view of what it means to consider life sacred, with a particular preference for life that's most vulnerable. So, of course, we hear a lot about the life of the unborn, but also the life of the migrant, the life of the person who's poor or destitute, the person who's at the end of their life, the person who's lonely. I think here in the United States, because of the particular contours of our political situation and the sort of shallowness sometimes of the political debate, being pro-life gets equated with opposing abortion. But what Pope Leo is saying, which is exactly what Catholic teaching holds, is that upholding the value and dignity of life is a much more expansive task than opposing a particular issue.
What would you say, Susan? It tells us, what does this moment tell us about his leadership style?
What I think is so interesting is that people are very naturally sort of juxtaposing him to his predecessor, Pope Francis, who was very outspoken, very fearless, had a very different sort of style. Leo's much more reserved, but you can see there's that same sort of boldness and a kind of deliberateness in saying, okay, what's exactly the word that this context needs to hear? It's interesting because Francis stirred up a lot of controversy among conservative Catholics in the United States who would try to dismiss some of his more challenging statements by saying, well, he's speaking out of a different context. The situation here is different. But what's so interesting is that we have an American Pope now. There's no denying that he knows the situation in the United States. He understands the complicated contours of the political situation, and he knows exactly what he's saying.
Yeah. When Pope Leo reframes pro-life to include issues like immigration, poverty, and the death penalty, is he redefining those terms, or is he restoring the original intent within the Catholic teaching?
Yeah, not redefining at all. As I said, this is what the Catholic Church holds. This has been, it's often referred to as the seamless garment of life. That's a quote from Chicago's Cardinal Bernardine several decades ago. But this kind of consistent ethic of life that looks at all life, whether it is unborn or at the end of its life, whether it is innocent or guilty, all as possessing the same fundamental dignity. There's no borders, there's no national borders in the Catholic understanding of life. It's, you don't say, well, I value the people around me. I value people who are American citizens more than people who are foreigners, so-called, or illegal. No, everyone possesses the same fundamental dignity in the eyes of God, in the eyes of the church. And that's what he's saying.
Yeah. Could this reshape how Catholics engage with issues, not just abortion, but social justice, capital punishment, and healthcare?
I hope so. I think it's really important to hear something like this from the Pope. Academics, theologians, people who are sort of professional Catholics use this sort of language all the time. When we speak about social justice or Catholic social teaching, and it's kind of news to people very often that, oh, wait, when we talk about being pro-life, we're actually talking about all of these issues. So I think it's really important that the Pope spoke so clearly, really, to American Catholics, saying, no, really, this is right at the heart of it. This is right at the center of what we believe.
Yeah. For everyday Catholics sitting in the pews, what's the takeaway from this and how they should live out their daily lives?
I think that this affirms an instinct that people have, but that gets muddied by political debates. Like I said, here in the United States, everything is sort of left or right, Republican, Democrat, black or white, this or that. We have this very kind of two-party system that we make of all issues. Is this issue liberal or conservative? But the Pope is saying, no, the truth lies somewhere in the middle of those, right? All of those issues are knitted together, and it's not so easy just to say, well, I should vote this way, or I should do this because I'm Catholic. He's saying, no, we're really called to transcend those easy political divisions and demand much more from our leaders, from our nation, from our moral leaders, and from ourselves.
Yep. All right, Susan Reynolds, thanks so much for your insight this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, have a great day. All right, folks, it's more of a nuisance instead of a great day weather-wise. We're looking at cloudy skies and a chance for a few isolated showers. So far, we've had these light showers around the area. That's going to continue, anywhere from drizzle to light rain off and on through the day. We'll get a better day tomorrow. Tuesday, less than a 20% chance for the rain. We'll be at 83, so going up a little bit there as far as our temperature goes. 84 on Wednesday, and with that front coming through, it'll knock those temperatures back down. More fall-like by the time we get to Thursday, and we'll hold on to that fall-like weather as we head into the weekend. We're back right after this. Back now with a look on the U.S. Capitol on this 6th day of the federal government shutdown, and lawmakers are still deadlocked on passing a spending bill. Here's where we sit right now. So far, the Senate has taken 4 failed votes to advance a bill to keep the federal government open through November 21st. Senators are expected to vote again today. Democrats are pushing Republicans to extend Obamacare subsidies, but the Republicans say it should wait until the end of the year. The House will remain out of session until there's some movement in the Senate. All this taking place while the White House continues its push to send National Guard troops into major U.S. cities. Joining us now is NBC Washington correspondent Alice Barr. Alice, there's new pushback on this rollout overnight into Portland, Oregon. Are we learning anything about the specifics of this deployment?
Yeah, good morning, Chesley. This has been a real back and forth, legally speaking, on the National Guard deployments into this particular city, Portland, Oregon. So just last night, in a rare Sunday evening ruling, a federal judge in Oregon blocked the Trump administration's move to send National Guard troops from California or from any other state into Portland. California's governor celebrated that ruling, writing, quote, "Trump's abuse of power won't stand." And that ruling followed a separate ruling by the same judge just one day earlier that blocked the deployment of 200 of Oregon's own National Guard soldiers into Portland. So there are those who are accusing the Trump administration of trying to circumvent that original ruling, saying you can't send Oregon National Guard troops, with the Trump administration then saying, okay, then we'll send them from other states. California said no. Texas was one of the other states called up there, and the governor there said sure. But in either case, a judge has put that effort on hold for right now.
All right, up next we're here in Chicago, and then we're hearing also that Trump's administration is sending 300 National Guard troops to Illinois, but that state's governor says there's no need. We don't need them here. Do you see any states able to successfully keep Trump's deployments out?
Right. So there have been objections across the board here in Washington, D.C. City leaders here objected. There are a lot fewer mechanisms here because there's not a state government, there's not a governor, and the federal government has, special powers here in D.C. So that one was pretty tough to block. Los Angeles, when there were National Guard troops deployed there was a concerted effort to get those reversed. And now we're seeing in Oregon that there has been, to this point, a successful round of court challenges. But the question is how long that lasts, because we know the Trump administration is going to appeal. They've already said so. And it takes a little while for these rulings to work their way through, these cases to work their way through. Just in Los Angeles last month, a federal judge ruled there that the deployment of National Guard troops and Marines was illegal. But again, that a substantial amount of time had passed before these rulings came down, and now there's a temporary injunction. So for now, you won't see the troops in Portland, in Oregon, but it just is an open question of whether ultimately will these wind up at the Supreme Court, and at some point will it swing the Trump administration's way.
Alice, any other places being named where we can see troops going in?
Yeah, the Trump administration has mentioned Baltimore, Maryland, as well as New Orleans. And those, again, New Orleans, or rather Baltimore specifically, we've heard Maryland Governor Wes Moore, who's a Democrat, very vocally opposed to the idea of having National Guard troops. So you can be sure that there's going to be another legal challenge set up there if that does come to pass.
All right, Alice Barr, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. All right, plenty more stories for you coming up, folks. This is The Take, and we're back right after this. New numbers show just how hard it is for many small businesses and minority-owned businesses to get financing. A new LendingTree report shows that even as the overall denial rate holds steady, racial gaps and small business challenges remain pretty stark. The report found that 39% of black-owned businesses were denied a loan or a line of credit last year, the highest denial rate group. The highest among any group. It discovered that companies with fewer than 4 employees were turned down at 5 times the rate of large companies or large firms. And that nearly half of all applicants of Small Business Administration loans or lines of credit were denied, more than double of the overall average. Joining us now is Matt Schultz, LendingTree's Chief Consumer Finance Analyst, to break down why lenders are pulling back on what small business owners can do to improve their odds. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thank you for having me.
All right, these are pretty sobering numbers here that we're looking at here. What stood out to you most about the data from this year?
Well, just the fact that, like you said, we saw almost 4 in 10 black applicants for these loans be denied. It's a really big number, and it creates really significant problems because starting a small business or maintaining a small business is hard enough in today's economy, but if you can't get a hold of the funding, it just puts such a brick wall in front of you that it's hard for you to accomplish anything. So those are really difficult numbers.
Explain to us, if you can, why why these racial disparities are still existent, right? So, so much, so widespread anyway. Even lending standards are supposed to be objective, right?
Yeah, and you certainly can't discount discrimination and things like that, but one of the reasons I think for this disparity when it comes to black Americans is that we have seen that they tend to have lower personal credit scores, for example, than Hispanic Americans, white Americans, and that is something that goes into oftentimes the application process for these loans. And said many times that there's very little in life that is more expensive than having poor credit, and I think that this is another example of that.
Does the high interest rates, the inflation, or the uncertainty of the job market play a role at all?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, anytime you have an uncertain economy, banks get a little bit risk averse, and they're a little more likely to tighten up the reins and be a little more calculating in who they're going to lend to across the board. So we're certainly seeing some of that here.
We talked about small business loan applications being turned away, double the overall average. Why are these government-backed loans still so difficult to secure?
Well, I think that some of it is just about the unpredictability of the economy and of these businesses. And some of it is also maybe that people aren't necessarily fully understanding what qualifies for these loans. So it's possible that they could be asking for a loan that's too big. It's possible that they may actually be a big business instead of a small business and not qualified that way. Again, it's possible that they may not meet the credit standards that are needed. So there can be any number of reasons.
What's the message you want to send to small and minority-owned businesses as a takeaway for this? You know, is there a reason for hope amid these challenges?
Oh, there's always reason for hope, and the best thing you can do is get your business and your personal credit in line, have a thoughtful business plan, and also make sure that you understand the resources that are out there for you. Because small business loans aren't the only option. There's plenty of resources out there, whether it's funding, marketing, networking, training, on down the line that can help businesses in your area. So it's important to remember those.
All right, Matt Schultz, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for the insight today.
Thank you.
All right. The government shutdown is creating headaches for many, and now the president has come up with a plan for some relief. We'll discuss that with our financial advisor, Andrew Pujols, coming up. Stay with us. All right, this government shutdown is starting to hit home here across Metro Atlanta. We got federal workers without pay, got services on hold, and now a new pitch from President Trump. He's calling for a one-time payments to taxpayers funded by tariff revenues. President Trump's plan would send every American a one-time check funded by new tariffs between $1,000 and $2,000. Analysts say the shutdown is costing the U.S. economy roughly $12 billion per week, with ripple effects across travel, retail, and the housing market. And it's hitting while recent surveys show nearly 2/3 of households have little financial cushion to play with here. Helping us to sort this all out and what it means for your wallet, we're joined by Atlanta's financial advisor and friend of the show, Andrew Pujols. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Good morning to you.
All right, talk to us. How realistic is this plan for stimulus payments to be funded by tariffs?
Look, President Trump throws a lot of stuff out there, right? You sit on social media, you'll see a lot of things going around. Now, is this realistic? Possibly. They might just pull this off. I'm concerned if they do. We can just go back to just a few years ago during COVID and all the stimulus money that was thrown out. This would be no different, in my opinion, than the stimulus that we had 4 years ago. If we all start getting $1,000, $2,000 checks, what happens to inflation again, and what kind of impact are we going to see? So while I know that no one's going to turn down a $2,000 check from the government, the question is, what will the aftermath look like in the months or the years following?
Yeah, I'm sure if it came in, you wouldn't just throw that aside, right?
No.
Do you have any sort of time frame on it when it could happen? Could it happen anytime soon?
I'd probably say that, in the coming months, I think probably likely sometime in 2026, if it were to happen, we'll go into midterms. Every administration and both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, are looking to get votes as we get, deeper into 2026. So if it happens, I would expect probably sometime next year. I think the concern bigger for me right now is the government shutdown and how long that's going to last, right? As you mentioned, it's having about a $12 billion impact per week. A lot of predictions are showing now that we might go somewhere around 27 to 32 days with the government shutdown, which means it takes us into the end of October, beginning of November. And let's not forget that we're only less than 100 days away from the beginning of starting of tax season. Yeah. That's going to impact every American out there when we get into tax season, and the IRS is massively behind the eight ball with tax season and being able to issue refunds and process returns.
Yeah. Now, if Americans did receive this payment, how much of a boost would it realistically be to the economy, especially during the shutdown?
Look, we might see a little bit of a boost, right? You got to figure if it's 1,000 or 2,000, it's probably a couple $100 billion. So we might see a little bit of a short-term boost, basically. But again, I'm more concerned about where do we, go with inflation. We have sort of kind of tamed down inflation from where it was, obviously at the peak of COVID. But we're still seeing impacts of inflation even today. Grocery store, insurance prices. High rents. So the effects are still lingering and they're still there. So if we reignite to some extent the economy with $2,000 checks going out to every taxpayer out there, what will happen in a year from now, right? Especially as interest rates come down further in 2026, because make no mistake, President Trump has said that he wants rate cuts to be super low. He's going to appoint someone as a new Fed chairman who's going to appease him and cut those rates. And what will happen when we reignite the economy and that inflation, probably as we go into 26, 27, 28.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to take that person out and we'll put you in. Say you are advising the White House right now. What kind of aid or policy move would actually help families the most during the shutdown? What would you say?
I think, look, lower interest rates obviously would go a long way, right? You're talking about rates are going to impact those who are trying to buy a home, those who have existing homes with equity who can refinance for a lower rate and get their payments down, which has a longer term impact on the economy. Small businesses who need to borrow, people with debt, people getting loans. So I would be more of an advocate of saying, hey, let's get rates down where everyone benefits versus long term versus having some short term impact of, you get $1,000, I get $1,000, we go to the grocery store, in 2 weeks the money's all gone.
Yeah. All right, Andrew, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate the insight.
Absolutely, Chesley.
All right, take care. All right, when we come back, Diddy has been sentenced with, pretty long sentence. What's the likelihood he'll serve it out? We're going to talk about that coming up. But immediately after the break, Liza Lucas has an investigation about a KSU student flagged for cheating on an online test. We'll get the very latest from her when we come back. Stay right there. Online classes promises flexibility, but for one KSU graduate, brought unexpected consequences. Exam software flagged her for cheating, something she says she never did. 11Alive consumer investigative reporter Liza Lucas is here with how these proctoring tools work and questions raised by the student in this particular case. Liza, what's going on here?
Good morning, Chesley. Well, the goal of software like this is to prevent and deter cheating. We're talking about academic integrity here. Now, the program actually records students during online tests and then flags movements that may look suspicious. It's then on the faculty to decide what those behaviors mean. Now, in Cassidy Janera's case, she says that KSU professors interpreted her eye movements as evidence that she was looking at materials that she wasn't supposed to be having. Here's her response.
So you got accused of cheating?
Yes, I did.
And I have to ask, did you cheat or try to cheat?
No, I did not. My actual webcam on my computer is broken, so I have an attachable one, and so it sits a little bit higher than the regular camera would, and so they accused me of looking down and to the left or to the right during the exam.
Now, Cassidy says she was given a copy of the videos and tried to appeal to the school that what was flagged was due to her camera position and an eye condition. So far, she hasn't been able to convince KSU to overturn the academic integrity violation. Now on a record, you can see some of those videos on your screen. And she's also worried about getting into physician's assistant school as a result, Chesley. But I also want to be crystal clear about our goal here as a news organization. This story is not about us deciding whether Cassidy cheated or not. It is really about raising awareness around this technology, given the popularity of online classes these days, Chesley.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to the professor or the teacher judgment call whether or not they made that. Roger, you reached out to the school. How did they respond?
Well, they didn't. We sent more than a dozen questions because, again, we were trying to understand the process, the technology, maybe the training for professors. We weren't expecting to get any specifics around Cassidy's case because privacy laws do prevent that, but none of our questions to KSU were answered. Now, I did do some research on the other side and looked into the technology, and I did learn that this particular company, they do offer training to faculty, and they are continuing to fine-tune their technology. So for instance, if you're allowing a calculator on your exam, if you're the professor and you allow that tool, you could kind of decrease the sensitivity of that AI software as a result. So there's a lot of finessing going on and upgrading of this technology. But as you mentioned, it's ultimately on the professor or whoever's proctoring the test to make that final call.
I'm sure KSU is not the only one using these tools. I know some of the other schools probably around the area are doing the same thing. Do they have those concerns as well?
Well, we definitely did confirm, because we were concerned and wondering really what was the reach of such tools. And really we found that a lot of the public universities are using either the same one as KSU or a similar one. And we found as we were reaching out, think back to how this has evolved. Rewind back to the days of when online courses were just beginning to get popular, and then they were really necessary during the pandemic. It used to be that if you were proctoring the test, you had to sign on in real time to monitor students. Now we have this AI technology that kind of cuts some of that time down. They can review after the fact. And we did talk to a professor at Georgia Tech who pointed out that some of that is for the students' benefit as well, because they can go in and point out, hey, this was happening here. This was what was really occurring, versus something being misinterpreted as cheating.
All right, Liza, thanks so much for that report. We'll be watching more of it to see more about it. Thanks so much. All right, if you have a tip that you want our team to investigate, all you have to do is call us at 404-873-9111 or email us at investigates@11alive.com. All right, on Friday, former Grammy-winning artist and recording producer Sean Combs was sentenced in federal court in New York City after having been convicted earlier this summer on 2 counts of transporting individuals across state lines for prostitution. He was sentenced to a prison term of slightly more than 4 years, given a $500,000 fine, as well as 5 years on supervised release. Let's bring in friend of the show and noted defense attorney, Daryl Cohen. Daryl, you know, we talked about this while it was going on. We were all over it. You was giving us great insight on what was taking place here. Now, walk us through this particular sentence. Is this typical for the convictions that he faced under this Mann Act?
Well, Chesney, it's very interesting. Did you notice that on the last hour, actually after the last hour, Puff Daddy was begging for help? Mm-hmm. Sorry that I did it. Way too late. Way too late. People keep it coming, but the sentence is ready to go. So he received the 4-year sentence, right? In the federal system, you serve 85% of your time. There is no parole as there is in the state system, at least in Georgia. And so he will have to serve 85% of that time. There's a question, however. Mm-hmm. Does the amount of time that he spent waiting to be sentenced as he was incarcerated before and during and after trial, will that count toward the 4 years? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how the court handles it. So it's a very interesting case. He was very fortunate. He could have gotten 11 years. He did not. But he was also unfortunate that he was convicted of doing really bad stuff. Mm-hmm. And I just don't understand why he's crying. He ought to be jumping for joy that it wasn't the serious sentence that he could have received. Yeah,
he could have received a lot more. Yet he got this mid-range, I guess you would call it a mid-range sentence. How do courts balance condemnation and restraint?
It's always hard to tell. It depends on what happens in the courtroom. We like to say, it's all about the facts. Well, it is, but then it's body language. It's facial expressions. It's how someone acted toward the court. Were they respectful? Were they denying it? What was their overall act? That makes a big difference. The judge can only do what he or she sees happens in the courtroom and based upon the facts. Now, there are still federal guidelines that govern this, but they're no longer mandatory. There was a time when the court would have nothing to do but follow the guidelines. Now, the court entered a sentence, and we'll see what Puff Daddy does. Obviously, he's going to appeal, so as Yogi Berra once said, it ain't over till it's over, and we'll see if it's over.
All right. So you mentioned earlier about his apology. You think it's way too late for him to have apologized? If you were there with him, you would have had him apologize earlier on?
There was an old Johnny Mathis song, too much, too little, too late. If I had been representing him, I would have strangled him, not physically, but vocally, and said, you've got to apologize immediately after the conviction. You've got to say that my actions were terrible, they look bad, and I am not that person. I so apologize. Instead, what did he do? He waited until the last possible second. Your Honor, please don't do this to me. I don't know what he was thinking, what his lawyers were able to make him do or not. And ultimately, it's the client who makes a decision as to how they're going to act or react.
Yeah. If Diddy was like an unknown person, right? He wasn't famous. Or do you think the sentence would look a little different?
Absolutely. I think it would be far less. And also, if his reputation preceding his court appearances was different, I think the sentence would have been different. Yeah. He wanted probation. The federal prosecution, the U.S. Attorney's Office wanted 11 years. It's a good compromise as far as life is concerned. May not be a good compromise as far as the individual is concerned on either side, but it's probably the right thing to do that the judge did.
Gotcha. Darrell Cohen, thanks so much for your insight as always, and I'm sure we'll have you back, my friend.
Take care, my friend. Stay dry.
I'm going to do my best. All right. Don't go anywhere, folks. CNN's Maribel Aber will join us with how our money matters, especially in days like this. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to the show. Wall Street starting the week with some nerves and numbers on edge. CNN's Maribel Aber joins us now from the NASDAQ market site in New York. Maribel, sounds like investors are bracing for another wild Monday.
They are, Chesley. Here we go. Stocks closed mixed Friday after a week of modest gains in the face of a government shutdown. The Dow picked up 238. The S&P was flat. NASDAQ lost 64 points. Now, federal reports won't be doing much to move markets until the government shutdown is resolved. You know, most of them aren't being produced while it's in place. Right now, I'll tell you, we're mixed now. We were in the green, Chesley. So it looks like now here at NASDAQ, we're up about 82. The Dow down 48 and the S&P up 11. Chesley.
All right. Costco's latest bulk deal isn't just paper towels, right? It's something that will wipe away excess pounds. Tell us about this.
One warehouse club is making a major push into the pharmacy business by slashing the price of popular weight loss drugs. Costco has entered an agreement with Novo Nordisk to offer Wegovy and Ozempic at half price. So that means members will be able to get a 4-week supply for $500. Now, you're going to still need a prescription to buy the drugs, and the discount only applies to people who self-pay without filing insurance. Novo Nordisk says it's a good deal because it allows customers to buy its product where they already shop, but counterfeiting has also been a major problem. Experts hope the discount helps reduce demand for those illegal versions, which can be dangerous. I mean, Chesley, I don't know about you, but in my social media feed, the amount of GLP-1 alternatives is wild.
Wow. Yeah, people trying to cash in, you know, on something that could be good for many. All right. I don't eat corn dogs, but I would imagine you wouldn't want wood in them, right?
No, you wouldn't. Foster Poultry Farms has recalled nearly 4 million pounds of chicken corn dogs, and that problem is wood was found in the batter. That resulted in at least 5 reported injuries. All of the affected corn dogs were sold under the Foster Farms brand. The Agriculture Department's Food Safety and Inspection Service website has a complete list of all the impacted packages, and it comes a week after Hillshire Brands had to recall 58 million pounds of corn dogs over a similar issue of wood from the stick getting into the batter. Chesley.
That's not a good thing. Not a good thing. All right there. Now, we talked about Cracker Barrel in the past, and they're attempting to rebranding, and they're still sending shockwaves around.
Okay, so Cracker Barrel has fired its design firm. That's the latest, Chesley. The profit agency created a new logo, remember? The restaurant chain had to quickly abandon back in August after immediate public backlash to it. Now, Profit was also helping renovate the restaurant's interiors. Cracker Barrel put a stop to that after it was done to just 4 locations. The company's relationship with Profit lasted just 7 months. But Chesley, you know, generally speaking, the company that hires an agency gets the final say. I mean, it's their brand, and it underscores the importance of understanding your consumers. I mean, that's why there's equity built into brand value. There's a trust that you build over time with the people who buy your product, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And so they have spoken, right? And said, hey, we don't want this change. We don't want all this fancy stuff. Keep it the same.
Keep it the same. It ain't broke, don't fix it.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And I feel that way about a lot of products. Just keep it the same, man, you know. Or just rebrand it into something totally different, right? So we can experience that. Maribel, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
You got it.
All right, take care. Folks, have you seen any coyotes in your neighborhood lately? Well, if you haven't, you may soon see some. We're going to talk about that when we return. Stay right there. This is The Take. We're back right after this. All right, don't look now, but coyotes are on the rise and they're proving hard to get rid of. A new study, in fact, from the University of Georgia finds that even when coyotes are removed from an area, their populations quickly rebound, sometimes even stronger than they were before. Researchers say that could change the way or how wildlife agencies and neighborhoods approach management going forward. Joining us now is UGA postdoctoral research associate Heather Gaia, one of the lead authors on this study. Heather, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. Your research found that coyotes rebound very quickly, even after large-scale amounts of them are removed. What makes them so resilient compared to other predators?
Yeah, coyotes are just super adaptable to the way that they interact with their environment. So traditionally, we would have had something like wolves in the area, and they tend to be very kind of aligned in their behavior, and they stick with that one kind of behavior. But coyotes can eat a really wide variety of prey sources, so they're very resilient to when one prey source goes away, they just move on straight to another one. They also have a very hierarchical kind of behavior structure. So when you remove coyotes, just sort of by, taking pot shots at a couple of coyotes, you're accidentally, what you might do is remove the alphas of the group, and then suddenly a ton of coyotes are reproducing instead of just one or two coyotes reproducing as you would have in a stable population. So you kind of have this population of both really adaptable to the environment and then also behaviorally really adaptable to being removed from the environment. And they can also reproduce more when they're under stress. So they are very good at coming back when you try and get rid of them.
Wow. All right. So we've seen, we have reports that they were seen in Buckhead all the way to Stone Mountain. Are these animals now a permanent resident here in Atlanta, Metro Atlanta?
Yeah. I think it's safe to say that basically coyotes are just the new normal, something we just have to get used to. So traditionally we would have had wolves in this area and maybe some cougars, but we removed those a while ago. And then coyotes have been here since the early 90s, and they've really just taken up residence in all of these areas. We know that they're around the Atlanta area. They're using those sort of green spaces, even between kind of highway buffers and things like that. Mm-hmm. But the good news is that they're really good at avoiding people, and they really don't want to interact with people as much as they can. So we found that they're actually changing their behavior to interact with people as little as possible, so that they can avoid us as much as they can.
I was going to say, wait a minute. Now, obviously, people are seeing them because it's being reported more and more. And if there's more of them, how likely are we to get into some kind of interaction with a coyote?
Yeah, so I think that we're going to start seeing more people are going to just start seeing coyotes present in their area. So just seeing them run by, maybe you'll see them in your yard or just kind of on your commute to work. But in terms of negative interactions, so actually having an aggressive interaction with a coyote, those are very rare. And those we can still remove individual coyotes that might be causing problems. But on the whole, they really are pretty much like skittish dogs. So they really don't like anything new or novel. And so if there's something that's a little bit they're unsure about, they're just going to avoid the area as much as they can. So I don't think we're going to be seeing too many negative interactions, but maybe we should consider keeping our cats inside and our small dogs inside at night specifically.
Yeah, I was going to say, now you said they are adaptable. So, would they just adapt to human life? To us, meaning that they kind of just see us and just kind of go away or whatever, like deer or whatever else is kind of in our area that we're used to seeing.
Yeah. So pretty much all of the research so far kind of seems to indicate that overall coyotes will kind of take stock of what's going on. And if you have a sort of a routine and a habitat and they live in your area, they're going to try and avoid you. They're going to figure out, okay, you're active at these times, I'm going to be active at a very different time. But they will, if you're leaving out any kind of food. So if you're trying to supplement, you feed your deer, if you're trying to, even bird feeders, things like that. Coyotes, a large part of their diet is actually not meat. It's just like berries and fruit and trash. They'll eat like crickets. They're eating all sorts of things. So if you're leaving food out in your yard, they're going to come and take advantage of that for sure.
You talked about them saying, okay, you're active at this particular time, we're going to be active at this particular time. What are those times a year where they become a little bit more active, or would they adapt to just being more active at night?
Yeah, so they definitely have adapted in terms of the timing during the day. So they definitely, when humans are active, they're trying to avoid that. So we would refer to them generally as crepuscular, meaning that they're most active in the evening and most active in the morning, but not really in between. So they're tending to become a lot more nocturnal and to avoid humans overall. So they're definitely trying to just stay away from us as much as possible. But seasonally, you might start to see a little bit more activity in the summer when they're having their pups. So, they'll kind of be sticking around in the same areas. Their home ranges will really shrink down to just kind of maintaining their pups and staying near those areas. Whereas in the wintertime, they might be kind of roaming a little bit farther, exploring new territories, looking for possible mates and things like that.
So we could possibly see them going up into the suburbs and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, a coyote home range is something that can really vary, but it can be, they can move over 50 miles in a night. Like that's very easy for them. We know genetically in terms of their populations that the population size of a coyote, like where if you were to circle and say this is a population, is larger than the state of South Carolina. So they're really they're over across the whole Southeast. You could say maybe that's a population of coyotes. So they're moving all over the place. The ones you see today might not be the same ones you see tomorrow. So just very, very large ranges, happily moving around. And the fact that they've been doing this for the past, 30 years or so, and there's really been relatively little issues, should give us some comfort, I think, about what the future is going to look like.
Yeah. Okay, Heather, you're telling us we had to get along with these gyro spiders. Now you're saying you got to get along with these coyotes. I guess we got to do it. Heather, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right. We're going to have another look at your forecast, plus my final take when we return. Don't you go anywhere. We're back right after this. Well, it's more of a nuisance than anything else. We have the rain around for today, a 20% chance, and we've been seeing these light showers popping up throughout the area off and on as we head through the morning. We'll see it again as we head into the afternoon. 78 degrees for the afternoon high temperature. We'll catch a bit of a break tomorrow. There's still a threat for an isolated shower, but it's less than a 20% chance on Tuesday. And we'll get a little bit more in the way of sun, which will help to boost that temperature up just a little bit as well. 83 degrees, your afternoon high on Tuesday. Wednesday, with a front coming through, we'll see a 40% chance for scattered showers and or thunderstorms. 84 degrees will be the high temperature. Now behind that front, temperatures will cool back down again. So fall comes back to us Thursday, Friday, and even into the weekend. You got Thursday at 72 degrees. If we see any rain at all, I think it'll be during the morning, unless that front gets hung up over us, and then we'll begin to clear it out as we head into the upcoming weekend with the temperatures returning to the 70s. All right, my final take, Coca-Cola hoping to put a major dent in sustainability. The soda company is teaming up with an environmental nonprofit to make reverse vending machines. Aha. These machines will allow people to recycle items like aluminum cans and plastic bottles. The plan is to roll out the innovative machines on college campuses where cash-strapped students could receive as much as 27 cents credit for each eligible item. The thought is, you introduce it to college students, they'll do it continue to do it as they are adults, right? The incentive is to encourage the students to recycle rather than throw away those empty bottles and aluminum cans. This is going to roll out first at colleges in Scotland, all the way across the pond there, right? But according to Resource and Recycling Magazine, the program like this in the United States could generate 447 billion units of beverage containers could be captured, generating about 33 million tons of recycled material for reuse. That equates to about $5.5 billion. After they roll this out in Scotland, they'll bring this to the United States, and our students consume recycle, and then everyone will start to do it, right? If it's a success, and I think it will be. Way to go, Coca-Cola. 2 thumbs up to you. Recycling, folks. Let's get that in mind. Make a better planet for our children's children. Have a great day.